Sia's song, Gimme Love. It is the Country Viewpoint here on Flow FM, and it's time to turn our attention to the agriculture space. And the RaboResearch General Manager, Stefan Vogel, joins me now to discuss the Australian agricultural trade logistics facing headwinds from escalating Red Sea tensions. Stefan, this has been really making the rounds in the news cycle over the last few days. Tell us what's going on behind the scenes here.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me. And if you think about the global trade and Australia, clearly with all the ag products that we're shipping to the world, but also with the imports we're bringing in from fertilizers to chemicals to machinery parts, we're clearly very heavily depending on the shipping industry as well. So if I'm thinking these days about the Red Sea and all the attacks that we face there in the region on shipping companies, it clearly brings the shippers in the world to the point to make tough decisions, figuring out, do I still take the risk and go through the canal and maybe be attacked in the Red Sea, or do I actually take the long way around Africa, which easily at 7 days on certain routes, maybe 15 days of extra travel time. And if you do that, you're not only facing higher costs for yourself, but it also means that the vessel is not readily available as quick as usual for the next load, and you're reducing the capacity in the shipping industry. So if we're looking into all the exports that we're doing here in containers or all the imports we're bringing in that are containerized, we clearly have seen that since the early days of December up until here middle of January, those indexes have already doubled for containers. So significant increase in the rates because of that incident, but we're still far away from those 2021 highs that we have seen in the container freight market. So we're still about 3 times as low or below that. So that's still good news, but the situation in the Red Sea is still getting rather tight, and especially for all the exports, be it in grains, be it in containers like meat or fresh produce, we will have to think about how to handle that.
It's a particularly devastating blow for canola farmers because we've seen one of the best seasons in Australia as far as canola production has gone, Stefan.
Yeah, I think for our canola, that's really not good news because clearly we're shipping bulk ships out with canola, and our prime market usually is that European market. And they've been rather slow in importing volumes from us. They've taken it from other regions first. And now, if we're finally getting into the play in that market a bit harder, we actually face a situation that our vessels are going also through that canal because that is just the shortest route for us to get into that biodiesel market in France and Germany and so on, where we usually traditionally bring quite a bit of our volume to. So for us, that puts us at disadvantage, and it especially also puts us at a disadvantage compared to the competitors because Ukrainians, when they ship over, they don't have to go through it. The Canadians, the other big exporter of canola in the world market, also has not to go through the canal. So we are clearly a little bit more at a disadvantage in that market. And as mentioned, freight rates have increased a little bit also on the bulk side. So with that, not the best news for our canola markets, but I'm getting actually a bit more optimistic for wheat and barley.
Stefan Vogel from Rabobank with some great insights. He'll stay on the line and he'll join me again soon. Don't switch over. Plenty more coming your way during our second hour of today's show. Morgan Wallen with Thinking About Me, and welcome back. It's the Country Viewpoint on Flow FM. I've got Stefan Vogel on the line. He's from Rabobank, and we're talking all about the fact that tensions in the Red Sea are having geopolitical consequences on Australian agricultural trade logistics. Just looking at fertiliser concerns and the importation of agricultural fertiliser, we've seen that input costs have really skyrocketed for many farmers and producers in Australia, and there's been a lot made about whether the government can come in and do anything to alleviate those cost concerns. Is this going to potentially play a role in seeing those costs perhaps even widen out further than what they are at the moment, given that we're seeing these attacks on fertiliser?
Well, if you think about fertiliser, clearly we come out of very, very high price periods in, let's say, 2022. It already got a little bit better in 23, still far off from the lower levels we are usually used to. So yes, the fertiliser costs here in the country have been rather high for our farmers. And if we're now thinking about what can happen, well, first of all, clearly global container freight and most of the fertilizer is not even coming in container, but the bulk rates They all have increased slightly. So that means maybe a little bit more cost, but we also need to think about, will some of those shipments go through the canal? And if they don't go through the canal anymore, what could disrupt? So if we're thinking about our imports here, the good news usually is that a lot of the nitrogen is not impacted as much because it doesn't go through the canal in heavy volumes. But if we're thinking about volumes like potash, that often comes from the likes in Northern Europe, like Belarus or the northern parts of the European Union. And that is impacted. Clearly, they would usually go through the canal. Even some shipments from Canada might make their way through the canal over here. So with that, there might be some slight delays in some of those shipments if they have to take another 7 to 10 days on their route over us to us. And there might be a little bit higher cost. But I'm not thinking that we will go back to these very, very high price periods we had about a year and a half ago in terms of fertilizer. So with that, maybe still good news for farmers that we're not as worried right now, but the Red Sea situation is probably also not at the end. We think it's going to get worse before it gets better with the shipping lines there. So we probably see more and more higher freight costs still coming to both the container and the bulk market here in the next couple of months.
Yeah, I'm sure many people will be crossing their fingers as we commence this new year that there will be some relief on the way as far as fertiliser costs go. Let's take a look at these ongoing escalations of tension in the Red Sea area. How long do you foresee that this may continue?
Well, that's really hard to answer, but the problem is a little bit, I don't find an easy solution. That's a bit the problem that usually when you think about problems in kind of political areas, you often think, oh, if this country does this, if this politician does that, we may find a solution. But we actually have a very complicated situation that the Americans are down there trying to protect the trade. The UK also does their job. Let's see how many other countries will join in. But there's quite a bit of an imbalance also between what it costs you to protect those vessels versus what it costs the Houthis, which are often backed by Iranian kind of drones and other material to do these attacks. So if you think about that, it's rather cheap for the Houthis to send a couple of drones. It is very expensive for the Americans and the UK and whoever else tries to intercept those. So with this, it's a little bit of an imbalance that makes it very hard to protect. And the area in that Red Sea is rather big. Yes, you look on the map and you think, oh, this is rather small areas, but it is a very, very big area that needs to be protected. There's a lot of vessels going through that canal up and down. And with that, I think we don't easily find a solution here. And we actually expect that there will be more attacks, that there will be probably also more shipping companies that have to take the safe route and say we have to go around Africa. And that all sounds easy, but if you're going around Africa, it not only takes time, but the more vessels go around Africa, the more also probably we'll have to find ports in that region to fill up with extra fuel to make those longer distances work.
RaboResearch General Manager Stefan Vogel, really appreciate your insights and your time on the Country Viewpoint today. All the best, and we'll speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much for having me. All the best.
Plenty more coming your way on the Country Viewpoint. Stay tuned.